This is Marketing Jam, a show featuring the brightest minds in marketing. Marketing Jam is brought to you by Cyber Impact, the email marketing platform made specifically for Canadian small businesses. Go to cyberimpact.com/jelly, create a free account, and start sending CASL-compliant promotional emails in just a few clicks.
Hey, welcome back to Marketing Jam. Shaheed Devji here. Thanks for joining us today. And today we have a very special guest. He's one of our compatriots in the marketing world here in BC and in Vancouver specifically. Alex Wan is the Managing Director at Periphery Digital. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, so to speak. Tell us what you do and what Periphery Digital is.
Yeah, so Periphery Digital is a marketing agency, and we specialize in targeting the Chinese demographic. So what I mean by that is we do help Western-based businesses target the Chinese demographic either locally here in BC and the Lower Mainland, across Canada, or even overseas.
Okay, so we were talking about this off-air before we pressed record. Your sort of route to where you are. You're an SFU grad, you went to Kwantlen as well, and you've done some programming, I saw. Is that correct?
A little bit. You did definitely creeped my LinkedIn profile.
I did, yeah. That's what I was there for, right?
Yeah,
creeping.
definitely.
So how did you get to where you are? And is it, the question is this what you always wanted to do? Probably not, right?
We definitely stumbled into it. Yeah, we definitely stumbled into it. Originally, my background has always been in sort of communications and marketing. And in around 2015, a couple friends of mine, we kind of started a different company where we were trying to get into the export-import business into China. Things didn't work out as well as we thought it would, just because of, we were pretty, I guess, green going into that business. But we definitely learned a lot by traveling to China so often. During that period, we were starting to look for other work and other contracts, and stumbled into sort of digital marketing for a real estate company that needed to target the Chinese demographic for one of their clients.
Right. So, I mean, in Vancouver and in the Lower Mainland, that's not necessarily a surprise that that type of service is needed because there is a heavy Asian population here, but it's still probably relatively a new thing in the marketing world, in the Western world, like you were saying before. So maybe explain to our audience here, what is, marketing to the Chinese audience? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, it comes down to, first off, sort of understanding of the culture. Because obviously when we say the Chinese demographic, there are sort of different communities and pockets within the Chinese demographic. And for us, we really have to explain to our clients what the difference is. And so from sort of the language, the copy, to sort of how they present themselves is a really important aspect of marketing. And then from there, we kind of figure out the localized sort of platforms that they should be marketing on. Like platforms here in Canada or North America where you're using stuff like Instagram, Facebook, it's great. But a lot of the local Chinese demographic are on other platforms. So specifically something like WeChat or Weibo.
Okay. So speaking of creeping, I was creeping, and I don't know if I found this on LinkedIn or on the Periphery website, but I wrote, actually it was LinkedIn, it was an article on LinkedIn that you wrote, and you mentioned that the Chinese market is a potential gold mine. Is that because it's being ignored, or it's just an emerging market now?
Both.
Okay.
In that, I mean, the immigration of Chinese citizens over into Canada has grown exponentially in the last couple of years, and we do think it's going to continue, obviously, in that trajectory. So the population is definitely growing in terms of that market, but at the same time, this emerging market, they're recently come into a lot of purchasing power. And so because of this, they're moving out of China, coming into Canada, where they're looking to spend money. So for companies and businesses locally here that want to target this demographic, it's a perfect sort of, again, gold mine for them, just because it is a demographic that has sort of almost been ignored, if you will, but it's definitely a growing population that shouldn't sort of be put on the sideline now.
Yeah. So I think maybe one of the questions that our viewers and listeners might have is, which businesses should be targeting this audience? Is it all businesses? Is it ones that have a special draw to that audience? Can anyone do this, you think?
Yes and no. I mean, that's a pretty open answer, but the areas of focus that we really sort of prime in on are real estate, tourism, and then brands and retail. Just because they have, obviously, they want to reach that demographic more specifically. There are definitely ways for smaller businesses, mom and pop shops, to sort of communicate with this demographic. But again, it's more of a cultural understanding of how to approach this demographic that would really help them, actually. Yeah.
So you guys have a pretty built-out team at Periphery. Are you busy? Are you really busy these days? Is this growing? Do you see any decline in what you're doing, or is it only going up from here?
No, I think it's we're on a really good trajectory right now. We've doubled in size in the last year, and we're hoping to continue that path. What's interesting is we are one of the few agencies locally here that has experience in not only marketing locally, either within BC or across Canada, but also in China as well. So we have a variety of clients with different needs. So for instance, we have tourism clients that are looking to target Chinese individuals in China and trying to bring them here. And we also have local clients here that want to serve the local Chinese demographic as well.
Yeah, so that was one question I had too, was when it comes to the businesses and what they're doing, you think of a local business here that might have a retail shop here and they want to get people into their shops. It's very different than a business that's based online, selling a product and can target that demographic that is overseas. One thing I read when I'm reading a little bit about what you guys do was that the Chinese demographic and the Asian markets specifically are the fastest growing, or one of the fastest growing when it comes to e-commerce, right? So it's not necessarily local shops that want to bring local Chinese demographic in, but it could be overseas that you're targeting as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely an area that we're sort of exploring, looking into. Kind of the world is, I guess, everyone's oyster over in China if they're able to sort of penetrate that market appropriately. Again, the issue with a lot of businesses, though, when they want to target the Chinese demographic is lack of understanding of how the culture works, because that plays a huge part into how businesses operate.
Yeah. Do you have any examples of sort of tough learning that you've had to go through in the last little while about understanding that culture, and maybe some wins and losses that you can share?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's specifically like I guess cultural issue, but it's more so a lot of the platforms that we work on are all based in China. So for instance, WeChat and Weibo. So a lot of the things and rules that we have to really abide by is really based on sort of Chinese laws. And so helping clients set up official WeChat accounts, for example, that's been a very interesting learning experience. Just because there are correct ways of doing it and incorrect ways of doing it. And doing it correctly actually requires a lot of work in terms of documentation and all that. For example, our first client, it took us around 8 months to get an official WeChat set up properly. But now we've sort of understood the process, and we can kind of do that now within a 6 to 8 week period.
Okay, so I'm assuming a lot of people watching and listening today don't know a lot about WeChat and Weibo. Explain what they are and maybe what the equivalent here that people use.
Yeah, so WeChat is probably one of the biggest apps used over in China. It's a pretty young company as of right now, but they have over 1.1 billion monthly active users. It's a really important app for the Chinese demographic, mostly because in China, it's how they get around and do everything. Everything from messaging friends to paying their bills, calling a taxi, ordering, reserving food, everything is done within this WeChat ecosystem. And so when a Chinese individual immigrates anywhere outside of China, they're still really stuck on this platform, not because they don't want to use Facebook or Instagram or anything else like that, but because in order for them to communicate with their friends and family or relatives back home in China, they have to use this platform because Google or Facebook doesn't exist in China right now. So when they're coming over to, let's say, Canada, they still are sort of forced to use this platform. And right now, what's interesting is if you go to anywhere in the Lower Mainland, there are areas where I guess merchants are actually accepting what's called WeChat Pay. So WeChat and Alipay, they're sort of the top form of payments that a lot of Chinese individuals use to sort of I guess transact products or services. In China, it's almost becoming sort of a cashless economy. So for instance, in tier 1 cities in Shanghai and Beijing, as an example, no one uses cash there anymore. Everything is done through the WeChat system or Alipay system. A little bit of a I guess a joke, but it's actually true, is that instead of homeless people instead of having a little cup for pennies or coins, they actually have their QR code out so people can scan and give their money
and so
through
that's
WeChat.
True to a certain extent.
That's true to a certain extent.
Wow.
So everything's done and operated through the WeChat Alipay ecosystem. And a lot of these individuals that move here, that's sort of what they're expecting. And so a lot of local merchants are now sort of understanding that now, and they're sort of applying for these payment systems to better serve this demographic as well.
So you said that WeChat, obviously, with the 1.1 billion active users a month. It's big in China. It is the thing to have. But and when people immigrate here, they're still using it. I've heard about WeChat for so many years now, and it kind of maybe taking over here as well. Is it something that has kind of taken root here, aside from the immigration, like people who were born and raised here within those communities are using that as well?
More so, definitely, than ever. I think it's partly because individuals are realizing that it is one of the best ways to communicate with this demographic. So individuals outside of China, they're slowly applying for their own accounts, personal accounts or corporate accounts, just to better serve this specific demographic.
So what would you say is the split between where you focus your efforts for a lot of your clients? If you were to say WeChat or your Instagram and Facebook's for marketing here specifically, is it pretty balanced right now, or is it heavily on one side?
It will definitely depend on the client. I think the thing with WeChat is it's still not a perfect system here in Canada, and so we do still really much rely on I guess local platforms to help with our marketing efforts. We started off very much in the digital space, but now we've sort of started media overall, so print and outdoors and everything like that. Partly because that's really how the Chinese individual sort of operates and are used to operating in terms of seeing marketing collateral. In China, what is a marketing system is usually called O2O marketing. So offline to online marketing or online to offline marketing, where you'll see a lot of QR codes. QR codes never really took off locally here, but it's very active within the Chinese community, either here or in China. What happens is you can actually take your WeChat account, scan a QR code, and be taken to either an app, a web page, or an official account. And so having a sort of, I guess, traditional print presence for a lot of Chinese marketing is an integral part of the entire sort of marketing, I guess, campaign.
I've started to see QR codes pop up a little bit more here. Maybe they're having a second win because, like you said, they were supposed to change the way we interacted with the internet and through our phones, but they haven't quite done that, have they?
So what's really interesting is the new iOS updates for Apple. QR code scanner is actually embedded now into your camera.
Yes.
So you can actually take your camera now and sort of scan your QR code, and it'll automatically scan if you have obviously the newest iOS on your iPhone. I think the issue, or the reason why it never really took off in the past, was because you had to download a third-party sort of QR code scanner in order to sort of access that QR code. With something like WeChat, for instance, that's kind of how everything's operated. And so intuitively, people understood that you have to have WeChat in order to scan this QR code, and therefore that's part of the reasons why QR codes took off in Asia and not really so much here.
Yeah. What's funny is that I was excited that the new iPhone update included that, and I used it a couple times. And then I was reading that certain Android models removed it from their camera.
Really?
And you have to download a third party. So one step forward, one step backwards,
Definitely.
I guess. But yeah, we'll see where that goes. So any other specific apps that are not the mainstream ones, the Facebooks and your Googles, that you guys dabble in the daily work that you do?
Yeah, so Weibo is another one. It's another sort of social media platform. It's definitely a lot more open compared to WeChat. The best way of looking at Weibo is almost like if it's kind of a amalgamation between Facebook and Instagram, where it's short form copy, short form creatives, pictures and videos and so on and so forth. Whereas WeChat's more long form. People who are reading WeChat are expecting almost like blog-like content.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, a lot has changed in the last year in digital marketing, and I'm sure you've been trying to keep up as well. And where do you see, talking about WeChat and it being established in China, and the way that all the interactions, whether your Uber or the equivalent, ordering your food and transferring money, is all done within that app. We've seen these types of things implemented on a small scale within Messenger and within the iOS Messages app. Do you see that as being one of the trends in the Western style marketing with those Western companies?
Yeah,
moving forward, is that where things are going in your mind?
I definitely think so, just because it's easier for the consumer. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why something like WeChat has taken off, is because they're kind of forced on this one platform. They're then forced to, third-party developers are then forced to sort of develop everything off of this platform. And it's made things a lot more convenient. So I can definitely see something similar taking off here in North America as well.
Okay. So in terms of how things have changed, you said you kind of stumbled into this, and you've been doing it for a few years, and you guys are doing well and busy. How have things changed from when you started to today? Aside from learning the platforms, but just generally in the digital marketing space, what have you seen change?
I think for us, it's just always being up to date on sort of any changes to any sort of platform and seeing how we can apply that to our clients and their campaigns specifically. I wouldn't say it's anything specific or drastic. It's just obviously anytime a platform updates anything, we kind of have to be on top of that, make sure that we're better, we're serving our clients to the best of our abilities as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what you do is targeting a certain demographic. The platform's always going to change, right? We don't know where Facebook and Google are going to be in the next couple of years. I'm sure they'll be around, but the next 5 years, the next 10 years.
Exactly.
Who can remember Ask Jeeves and
MySpace?
MySpace and Yahoo. And maybe we remember them, but when was the last time we used them? And some of them don't even exist anymore, right?
Exactly.
So how do you protect yourself against one of these things kind of disappearing a day from today? Is there anything you can do about that?
Nothing really we can specifically do other than to just be up to date as much as possible, consistently learning, consistently reading and understanding how things are done either here or overseas or all around the world, and taking successful campaigns that either we have done or others have done and sort of mimicking it so that we can produce the same results for our clients.
So I'm assuming marketing is marketing no matter where you're doing it. What do you find has been successful in your approach with this demographic or otherwise? And what advice can you give to some of our viewers and listeners in the marketing world, whether they are marketers at companies or small business owners who are doing their own marketing while running their own businesses? What advice can you give to doing good marketing today in the landscape that we live in?
I think being able to stand out and be different from your competitors is definitely really, really important. But there's something to be said about having really good content as well. I think right now everyone's making content. And it used to be that content is king. In my opinion right now, distribution is king. So being able to put your content in front of the right people is what matters right now, just because good content could be subjective, right? But being able to have good content put in front of the right person is a great indicator of how well something's performing.
Yeah. Is the targeting for WeChat similar to what Facebook has these days?
Very
which
different.
Is probably at the top of the game.
Yeah, it's very different, and I think they're still changing how they target and how they do things. Right now in North America, you can only technically run national level sort of campaigns across Canada. It's hard to sort of geo-target if you're using the sort of in-app advertising. But there are other ways that we advertise through WeChat where we are buying, I guess, media space off a localized WeChat media account.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll buy everything from banner ads all the way to sort of advertorials, and have that sort of formatted specific to our clients' needs.
Is the influencer space similar with this demographic as progressed or further progressed?
I definitely say further progressed, actually. Yeah. We call them KOLs for the Chinese, I guess, Chinese marketing, KOLs, key opinion leaders.
Okay.
And it hasn't really taken off locally here. But definitely in China, KOL is sort of like the best way, or one of the best ways to sort of get your product and service to the market.
And live streaming is a big thing with that type of audience too,
definitely,
right?
There's
a lot of either influencers or KOLs, like you're saying, that are in the video and live streaming space.
Definitely, and that's where something like Weibo plays a large part as well. Like I mentioned, WeChat's a very closed-off ecosystem, and so KOLs work really well for something like Weibo, where it's kind of like Instagram or Twitter, and it's very visual, and that's where a lot of sort of really great KOL campaigns are done, is off Weibo. Not to say there's no KOL campaigns on WeChat, it's just, I guess, a little bit of a different system.
Okay, so I sort of asked you this earlier, but can small businesses sort of start to dabble in this themselves, do you think, or do they need to come to somebody like you still these days?
I definitely think there's room for any business to have a presence. I think the best way is to set up your own WeChat account and sort of start understanding how it works. Finding maybe friends who have a WeChat account, asking them sort of how they're using it, either for media or for other things, to sort of understand how they could actually use it for their own marketing purposes as well. They could do everything from having their own WeChat account and setting up QR codes on different forms of advertisement for people to see, and that's not hard to do. But it is something that I guess you kind of have to be aware of and sort of like train yourself to understand a little bit more of.
Right, perfect. So one thing we like to do here at the end of each show is to ask you about sort of where you get your information and maybe provide some resources that our audience can take back and start to look into themselves. So are there any blogs or books or magazines, podcasts maybe that you guys and you specifically turn to for, you know, staying ahead of the game, staying ahead of the curve, making sure you're well informed in this space that you work in?
Definitely. Strategy is definitely a great resource. Otherwise, I mean, I'll you know, do my research on stuff like Business Insider a lot. The podcasts I listen to are probably more so like business specific than marketing specific. Can't think of anything.
Okay, that's cool. Anything else you want to talk about today? Anything we've missed about Periphery Digital or what you're doing, or even trends marketing? Where do you think things are going? You know, we talked about content and distribution. Is video and content going to get to a place where, you know, there's too much of it? I feel like we might be already there, and you know, we have to focus on something else. Like, where do you think things are going from here in what you do?
I think I don't think there's going to be really that much change, but the change will come from the different platform that's going to be built out. Just because we can't predict if another startup, another social platform is just going to take off and take over something like
the next Snapchat, right?
Exactly. So that's something that I guess we have to sort of be aware of. There are, you know, tons of different Chinese-based social media startups sort of popping up here and there. For us, is more so pinpointing the right ones for our clients and what they should actually be on.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us. I think that was really informative for our audience. Certainly was for me. And where can people find you and more about Periphery if they want to go online and check you out?
Yeah, they can visit peripherydigital.com and always send an email to us at hello@peripherydigital.com if you have any inquiries.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks a lot.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.